seconds to start.
Okay, there's the engaging clock. Good to see you.
There we go.
Okay, it is 5:30. I'm going to call this meeting of the Stephenville Planning and Zoning Commission together. One quick note before we get started. If there's anybody here who is interested and concerned about a rezone on Dale Avenue by Tim Trotter, that item has been pulled from tonight. So just wanted to let everybody know that. All right. First order of business tonight will be to consider the minutes from the previous meeting. Commissioners, are there any questions or changes? I do have one quick question, and I've already talked to Shira about this. If you look in the minutes, the commissioners who were absent were Carrie Schindler and Bill Muncy, but they were also listed as voting as well, and so that has been corrected. So. All right, I will now entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented with the changes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made by Meta, seconded by Richard Petronas to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. And with that passes. All right. Our first case tonight will be case number SV 2018-005. Applicant Ryan Gailey is requesting a subdivision waiver from section 6.12 utility policy to be constructed at 2250 Tarleton, Stephenville, Texas. Jeremy?
The subdivision ordinance, bear with me for a second, I'm gonna read some stuff from that. The regulations are adopted pursuant to the authority granted by the U.S. Constitution, Texas Constitution, laws of the state. All properties subdivided into lots, blocks, streets, property be subdivided within the city limits or ETJ shall be laid subject to the approval of these. The utility policy, adequate utility systems required. Subdivisions within the city shall be provided with an approved water supply and distribution system with an approved sewage collection, disposal, and adequate water supply and distribution and sanitary sewer systems shall conform to the engineering standards manual. All systems must be consistent with the comprehensive plan and master plan for the water distribution and sewer systems. Water and sewer lines must be laid across property lines in every instance. Beginning point, ending point of the main line shall be determined by the city and shall simply be at the nearest existing adequate source in the case of water. 6.14 wastewater utility. General approved means of wastewater collection and treatment required. All lots, tracts, parcels of which development is required is proposed shall be served by an approved means of wastewater collection and treatment according to the engineering standards manual. The wastewater lines extended to subdivision borders. Number 5, all lateral and sewer mains installed within the subdivision must extend to the borders of the subdivision as required for future extensions of the collection system, regardless of whether such extensions are required for service within the subdivision. If due to physical constraints, a new subdivision will never be constructed beyond the developing subdivision by the city administrator may approve that. In this particular case, that wasn't applicable. Waiver criteria, the decision maker, which would be you guys in this situation, would take into account the following factors: the nature of the proposed land use involved in the existing uses of the land in the vicinity, the number of persons who will reside or work in the proposed development, the effect of such subdivision waiver might have upon traffic conditions and upon public health, safety, and convenience and welfare. In your packet, you'll find some more information. So your decision tonight will be to approve or deny the subdivision waiver. If we have a couple of pictures to showcase the property that we're talking about. Big Lots is to the east on this picture. You'll see it bounded in blue. You can go ahead and go to the next picture. The zoning got multifamily across, but it is surrounded by commercial. Next slide. And then the future land use is commercial in that area. Mr. Ryan Gately is here and can answer any questions specific about the project and specific about the waiver request.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to open the public hearing and ask if there's anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this subdivision waiver to come to the podium and state your name and address and tell us why.
I'm Ryan Gailey, address 104 Cantor Lane, Stephenville, Texas. What I'm proposing here, I'm assuming we're talking about the sewer that is down there close to the end of Dale and Tarleton there. I've got about the total feet there that I would be saving if I would bring that up there to about the middle of my property. It'd be about 187 feet that I would not extend past that point should you grant that waiver. The property across the street obviously has utilities, has sewer utilities directly to the west of it, I believe. The only property that's undeveloped right now in that area is, as you can see, is kind of right across the street, kind of to the northeast there. That property, my understanding, the sewer is in the back of that property, running from I believe that's Charlotte Street.
Can you go back 2 slides, Karen, please? Sorry. There you go.
And the sewer, as you can see there at the very, very top of the map there, the sewer runs in the back of both of those, the vacant pieces there. So I know and the land contours that way naturally towards the back as well. So any building or anything that would go on, you've got a natural slope there. So any building that would go up towards the front, you would have a good natural fall there. So the likeliness of ever having to put in a lift station or anything like that for the back into the back of that property would be very, highly unlikely. So it doesn't serve any purpose, any other purpose that I can see other than, for any future of that, because everybody around there, big lots, all the other properties around there already have sewer. My property's the only one right there that doesn't have sewer right there in the front, sewer line, so.
All right. Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Gailey?
What portion of this ordinance are you asking to be waived? I assume you're not asking for the entire ordinance to be waived.
No, I have to have sewer access. There's a manhole down there, I think right at I'd say the corner of Linda Lane and Tarleton. I've got to go all the way down the street past my property. The sewer's not even up to my property. I've got to go down the street, pick that up, and then bring it up, to where I need it, or as the ordinance says, extend it all the way to the furthest point of my property line.
So the ordinance says that you have to bring this, I assume this.
Right in there,
bring
yes,
us
sir.
the sewer?
Yes,
So you're saying you're being required to bring the sewer from this point all the way to this point?
yes, sir.
Okay.
And you only want to bring it to the midpoint, is that?
Yes.
What is the reasoning, maybe I missed it, for only bringing it to the midpoint?
$18,000. It would be about the cost, the approximate cost there for me to take that, including the sewer and the street repair, based on the bids that I've got.
And how does this affect, I don't know, the sewage waste collection if it's only coming through the midpoint of your property? I mean,
Well, I've got a tentative site plan for the property. The buildings are going to be, I'm going to have 2 entrances there. It's going to have more of a horseshoe a horseshoe around the property, I guess I should say, for the driveway and parking. So the sewer at the high point, the highest point is on the big lot side there of the property. So with the drainage, that'll have to be cut just slightly, not enough to hopefully have a retaining wall, but hopefully the engineers with the drainage and everything like that will get my elevations to where I'll have enough fall to, by the time I have my setbacks, set my buildings in. I usually like to bring my sewer out the front because I bring the water in the back so I can keep my water in dirt most of the way. In case if I ever have a leak, when I have a leak, it's easier to fix. Sewer, you know, if it's under parking, you know, it's, you know, if it's done right, you know, bedded right, it's never gonna break, you know, until it just, the pipes rot, get old. So anyway, when I bring that out the front and go down, there's not, I can hit that at an angle without any issues.
And
There.
what are you putting in here? Is it apartments or?
Yes, ma'am.
And what you're saying is, the property, the only other property that's not developed is across, kind of catty-corner across the street, and you're not going to negatively impact them because they already have access to sewers, what you're saying, correct?
Yes, yes. And the contours of that, you know, it doesn't, you know, it goes, then if you're familiar with that area, it drains to the back now,
Yeah.
you know, currently. So the contours of that would be, I don't know how deep that sewer line is back there. But I would think, you know, from that distance, if someone built, you know, 25 foot off the setback and took their sewer all the way back, I know if I owned that property, that's what I would be looking at versus trying to tie on or extend it because it's so much cheaper. If I already have sewer access, why would I add more unless, you know, I don't know, but.
Now, is this a narrow corridor that comes all the way out to Washington?
That is, from.
Is that
from-
part of your property?
It is. It's I forget the exact width. I think it's about 17 feet, 17 to 18 feet there.
So you could
Uh,
possibly tie on to the 8-inch sewer that is on the, appears to be on the north side of Washington.
I would have to tear out about 450 feet of concrete. I think, well, whatever that distance is, it's been a while since I've looked at that part of that survey. If you're familiar with the Oasis Car Wash
Right.
there, the Oasis Car Wash has a easement on that property. They've had it for years. What I was told by Tab Thompson, who owns that car wash, he told me that, I don't know however long ago it was, or years ago, that I think all that property was owned by where Citizens Bank is sitting now.
Right.
And whenever they sold that to the bank, that's what they needed at that time. So that it just kind of laid in like that. I don't know for what other purpose that it is, but Mr. Thompson has an easement there, and he paved it so that he has egress there from his car wash, easier egress from his car wash, because it's,
So
when you
the
come out.
concrete overlaid top of that little corridor?
Yes, yeah, it's his driveway, yeah, or not his driveway, but he's got an easement to it.
Mark, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is to Jeremy. Jeremy, you indicated that the staff has recommended denial. Can you give us a basis upon what the reasoning was for the denial?
Well, when I say recommend denial, not necessarily of the waiver, but of the, you know, of the request, you know, originally came in not wanting to do it. Of course, you know, we follow the subdivision regulations. And then when it comes for, you know, we asked him if he wanted to come for a waiver. He was more than welcome to. You guys get to decide the waiver. I typically don't bring a recommendation to this point, because we've denied it at this point, bringing the waiver.
Okay, what you're saying is that you are contemplating bringing that sewer line connection halfway up the line of your property, is that correct?
Best I can tell, that's about where I would need it.
Did your staff find that there was a potential issue if that were in fact granted?
So what Mr. Gailey is saying is correct. There, I mean, there's a sewer line on the back of the property. The really, in our opinion, looking at this with Public Works, is that really the only part that can be serviced by that line that's coming through is about the front, maybe third of the property because of elevation, without a lift station. So if Mr. Allen decides to maybe do that in phases, then it maybe would affect him where he could pull it across the street. I mean, if he was gonna develop the whole property, like Mr. Gailey was saying, it might be beneficial for him to pull in the back. So, and I believe you have a letter from Mr. Allen, but, you know, it's an option. That's why the minor waiver couldn't be waived, because there is a subdivision that could utilize that line. It's very minimal, but it's an option that, you know, we would be taken away from Mr. Allen. I don't know, you know, I'm not a money person, I can't design the system, if it'd be more beneficial for him to even at the front third to bring the sewer line from the back of the property anyways. So, you know, but that was the concern Mr. Allen had, is that he wanted that option.
And, this is Mr. Allen's property here?
That's right.
Okay.
If you ask Mr. Allen, if he's the one that had to pay for it, I bet he'd change his mind.
Why isn't it, you know, it says that you have to have the sewer, the full frontage of your property when you develop it. The property just to the, west corner where he'd have to go, I don't know if that's 100 feet or whatever. It hasn't been developed there. Why? Like, why is he having to develop it for that property as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I bet you my guess is they probably have a septic system on that house, would be my guess. I don't know for sure, but you're talking about the sewer line not being pulled to his property, and I don't have the answer to that, but my guess is it probably has a septic system there.
In your staff's opinion, do you feel that if the waiver was allowed, that it would be a detriment to the surrounding property owners?
Only one, possibly one, if any. The only property that probably would have a negative effect would be Mr. Allen's property, if he wanted to utilize that line and it was cost beneficial to utilize that. And
How would
so,
it not be a positive effect that he would have a third option? Because right now he has two options, one at the back of his property and one at the east of his property. And if Mr. Gailey, is it Gailey?
Yes.
If he pulled it halfway there, then he'd have a third option, so, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but he's required to go the whole way, I mean,
Yeah.
technically, so as far as
Yeah, but if he didn't
Mr. Allen,
develop it, yeah.
but I'm saying, as far as Mr. Allen's concerned, if he went the full way, it would cost him less if he's trying to.
so Mr. Allen ties on to this line, he would have to take it from the west corner to
Uh-huh.
the east corner, unless there was absolutely no other development that would utilize that line. And so in this case, there is one particular development that could utilize this line.
Without a
Now,
lift
whether
station.
he can develop the front third of that lot with a sewer line without a lift station.
We're talking the front third of this.
Yeah, because of elevation, like Mr. Gailey says, it all goes toward that back sewer line. You know, and that was Mr. Allen's point, is dependent on the cost. You know, he hasn't done any engineering or anything for development of that property, but when he gets ready to, will he have that option? And if we're waiving that subdivision regulation, he doesn't have that option.
Mr. Gailey, if you were granted the waiver, what you're effectively asking is that the waiver would only apply to one half of that front property line. In other words, bring the sewer to one half that property, of your property line. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any other comments? Any other questions?
I guess just to go back to the narrow strip, that's covered in concrete, so that's not an option for you, or it's more expensive than carrying the sewer all the way to the east?
Well, it's certainly more time consuming to do so.
Right.
I haven't crossed that bridge. To my understanding, that sewer line is somewhere about 6 feet deep at Washington. I do not have my drainage study done, so I don't know the elevation of my buildings to shoot that far to have that kind of drop You know, I mean, I know I'll have to go to a 6-inch line, which I may have, I probably would at some point anyway. With a 6-inch, I can go a little flatter than I can with say a 4-inch sewer. So to bring that distance there, I don't know, I had a property I developed over on Lillian, and I thought it was the deepest sewer line that I ever built around Stephenville. It was 7 feet deep at the manhole. And I was like, oh wow, this is, you know, there's no way I'm gonna hit this, you know. And engineering came back, and at ground level, I was plus 2-3 feet, somewhere around there. Engineering came back, we had to take out a bunch of dirt, never shot the grade again, missed it by 8 inches, had to put in a lift station. There's no way I could get it to fall. So yeah, I'm gun shy on it. So once those deals come back, I would definitely explore that. But of course, the cost of cutting that concrete out and trying to, you know, coordinate with Mr. Thompson on that and how long it would take, and, you know, there's a lot of interruption there. You know, it certainly, it's a long distance to do, so.
From the looks of this map, it appears that you're going to have to cut Tarleton Street anyhow to get to the sewer line, which appears to be on the north side of Tarleton Street. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, I would have to, yeah, that's a part of really more of the expense is putting the street back. Of tearing that street and bringing it over, and then, yeah, bringing it in.
How many units are you thinking you're gonna have?
58.
58
Yeah, there's eight buildings total.
Well, yeah, but it's cheaper to do it straight to the Oh, get one of them boilers.
How did you come up with or building the sewer line just to 1/2 of the property line? How did you come to that?
I really wish I would have brought a site plan with me. I didn't, I apologize. The buildings that I have, I've got, I have 8 total buildings there, consisting of 8 plexes and 6 plexes. There's 2 buildings that will face the, the 2 on the furthest east end of the property would set basically parallel, or perpendicular rather, with Big Lots. Like the backyards are going to be on the parking lot side of Big Lots. So those buildings are going to face out. Again, that is my highest point of that lot. So I don't think we're going to do a little bit of cut and fill. The drainage is a whole other thing that we're trying to get past, because we are going to have to do some underground drainage on this property as well. But we're going to, based on that and the distance that I have to go, like I was saying, I'll come out the front. I'll probably have, I think I have on that rear setback, have about 20 feet. My buildings are, they're approximately, I think they're about 35 feet wide. And then we usually bring that sewer out the front. So, you know, I'm gonna be, from that property line, you know, I'm gonna be, you know, 55, 60 feet in front. And so the rear building, you know, we tie those buildings in together. So 2 buildings, bring the sewer out the front, run it towards Tarleton, and then we would angle over, and then I've got buildings that are tied in the middle there. They're tied in the middle. There'll be, like I was saying, there'll be a horseshoe driveway there. So there'll be buildings through the middle of that property, right, the dead center of the middle. And so those buildings, once I got onto my property, they would actually, the sewer, they would tie together, and then I would have one tap right there in the center of it at the manhole.
Got a question for you, Jeremy. Wouldn't you, with a development that size, that many units, wouldn't it actually be advantageous to be dumping into that 8-inch line as opposed to dumping into a 6-inch line?
I'm not an engineer, I don't know, but we follow our subdivision regulations though, that was drawn out for us, so we're talking about him pulling the line.
Yeah, but still, 58 units dumping into a 6-inch line, I mean, that's that size. 8 inches, you're gonna have 60% greater capacity over an 8-inch line than you do a 6-inch line. And with that many units,
If it was required that we were gonna have an issue with the size of the line, the city would pay for the oversize, I believe, on that particular case, but, I don't know that that's an issue, because when I've talked to Public Works, they've never mentioned that as an issue. But if we required, an upsize, and I think it would be relevant in that situation, that scenario, if we had to do that for capacity issues, the city would pay for the upsize on it.
The engineers tell me that a 6-inch is gonna be more than adequate. I forget how many units you can put on a 6, but, or how many plumbing fixtures rather you can put on a 6-inch line, but it's more than, it's a lot more. I think that number is around, it's around 100, 120 units that you can put up to on a 6-inch line, I believe.
how many units do we already have on that though?
No, I mean on a tap, excuse me, yeah.
I realize what you're talking about, but how many units are already on that 6-inch line?
Not any, it's not there.
I'm not aware of any capacity issues. If that, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think we have any capacity issues on that line that I'm aware of. So I don't think that the 58 units will have that impact, but prior to him building, we will, Public Works will address that. And that'll be in the review process, which they're very thorough in Public Works, so.
So, Mr. Gately, this comes down to a financial issue, basically, it just, the cost of extending it the full is,
Well, I'm not a fan of spending money if I don't
Sure.
need to. So that's why I just ask, you know,
Okay.
if, you know, it's a possibility, if it makes sense. I mean, I would completely, I wouldn't even ask if you know, the properties across the street, you know, or someone, you know, down the street from you or something like that didn't have access, or even Big Lots wasn't developed yet, you know, I understand that, you know. I mean, I understand what it's there for, and it makes sense that somebody doesn't bring it up just to the edge of their property and ties into it and forces somebody else to go even
Right,
further
that-
because they
that's
have
my
a,
concern.
you know, more
Right,
frontage or,
right.
you know, things like that. So, you know, I understand that. So I just don't see it advantageous to the city or any future planning there, a development other than Mr. Allen's property across there that has sewer access, so.
My reason for asking is just under 4 intent of subdivision regulations, it says financial hardship to the applicant shall not be deemed to constitute undue hardship. So based upon that, it would suggest we have to deny strictly because that's the only reason you're bringing it forth. And then I see your logic, but my concern is Mr. Allen's property. And the unknown, you know, I understand what you're saying, that there's sewer on the back, but he's not done those studies, he hasn't developed, he doesn't know. So that's my concern.
Mr. Gailey, if the waiver were granted to you, do you already have an understanding with the city as to how far that sewer line is to be brought onto or up to your property 1/2? Is that understood?
No, I have discussed it with Nick briefly and Jeremy a little bit, but there's nothing in writing on it, or there's not anything that's, you know, that's set in stone with it. I just did it to where, you know, I deemed reasonable. I honestly don't think that I need it that far, but I don't wanna say that and then, you know, get the way, I've gotta take it further or something like that. So I just, like I said, I was trying to be as reasonable as I could without, you know, solve any other issues or concerns that somebody may have. So looking at my site plan or things like that, that I could probably use that tap somewhere right in there at that middle.
Are there any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Gailey. I'll now ask if there's anybody here who wishes to speak in opposition of this subdivision waiver. Hearing none, I will let the record show that we do have a letter from Brad Allen with reference to this specific case. It does say, in Mr. Allen's words, the variance to not follow the longstanding requirement from section 6.12 of the utility policy by not extending the utilities the full frontage of the newly developed property. This will mean that when my property is developed, I will bear not only the cost of the utility development for my property, but also bear the expense of extending the utilities across a portion of the applicant's property. This is a cost he should pay, just as many property owners before have paid. Please deny this request. And that is from Mr. Allen, and that's in your packet, so. If there's nobody else to speak in opposition to this, I will close the public hearing, and I'll open this up to questions from the commissioners. Any comments? Mr. Schindler?
I would just say, you know, the future land use is commercial, and so I guess, you know, going through some of that, if we build multifamily residential or whatnot, it will never change to commercial, and a commercial builder would come in and possibly run the frontage of the sewage and not even think twice about it. So, I mean, if that's the plan of the city, that's where I would say, you know, that's what we should plan towards.
Okay.
And plus, like you said, the 8-inch, or I'm not a sewer guy either, but it seems like they have a bunch of options. All property owners involved have options, and so if they're gonna choose one that's less expensive to them, they have those options. But to follow the ordinance that's long-standing or whatnot, and go with the plan of being commercial, I just thought about that. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on that.
I don't see it going commercial anytime soon, if he's putting in this apartment I mean, it seems
Well,
it's
it-
gonna
No.
stay that way for at least 20 years.
No.
If there's
within our
apartment
lifetime.
complexes,
Yeah.
it won't go commercial for a long time.
No.
Yeah, for a very long time. I mean, my inclination is to deny, and I hate that. I hate costing of money, but it's the way the ordinance stands. It's strictly a financial issue, and we don't really know what's up with Allen's property.
Right.
We don't know the details. We're making assumptions about that, and it could financially cost him a lot based upon those assumptions that we're making.
Mhm.
That's my point.
Sure. Any other comments?
I guess my only question in my mind is that if the waiver were granted, that there is an understanding as to, you know, how far this sewer line is to be placed. Is it gonna be 1/2 of his property line? Do you all have an agreement, or can you get your heads together to agree on it?
When we've discussed it, I mean, he's looking at, approximately 188 feet, which is roughly right about half the 375 feet. You know, that, depending on how his study comes out, that could change a foot or two. So, I mean, if we do anything, if we do grant a waiver, I would say approximately 188 feet, just to give a little bit of leeway. But I think it'll all depend on when he gets his engineering back done. So we have tentatively discussed a distance. I mean, it's not like it's just random, pick the middle. I mean, he's gonna find, if the waiver's granted, he's gonna find the distance that's gonna be most beneficial to him, so.
The question I have, pardon me, is that the ordinance does say that this must extend from border to border, okay? And that's what the ordinance says. That and the financial hardship, like Lisa mentioned a few minutes ago. I'm really torn because the ordinance is right here in front of us. And the ordinance says that it has to be done this way. And that's why we have the ordinances here, so.
Has a waiver like this ever been, granted? Jeremy, do you know?
I was gonna ask the same thing, because we were talking like, why don't it just go up to the next person in line? Cause the last guy in line, which he's not technically the last guy in line, on this specific sewer line, but the last guy, does he have to take it the full frontage? And you said, well, no, that in that situation, probably waiver, they'd make that decision, but I was gonna ask how much.
And you see in your packet, and I mentioned it in the opening, if that is the end of the subdivision, there's no other boundaries that will be extended to, then a minor waiver can be granted from the staff standpoint. However, in this situation, there is another boundary that could be extended, cost beneficial, I don't know, but I don't know if a waiver like this has been granted before. Our job is just to enforce the subdivision regulations as they stand and give the developer an opportunity to state a case for a waiver. And so that's my direction. I don't know what the past, regime has done, so.
Well, with the decline in brick and mortar retailers, the owners of the shopping center in which Big Lots is located may decide to tear it down, and they wanna put in apartments as well.
It's some commercial.
At some point in the
Yeah.
future, and they're gonna be stuck with a sewer that's only halfway across the property, so.
They already have sewer.
Right
They're
into the front.
they're served from Washington. Big Lots is served.
If the property is not subdivided. I mean,
Right.
if somebody tears down a shopping center, which unfortunately is happening more and more, I mean, there's a lot of vacant spaces in that shopping center now. And as to what the owner may want to do with that, he may want to subdivide it, so.
It's hard to
seems
get
me
into. It's
that
hard to get into the what ifs of a scenario.
Yeah.
But typically, if a property gets, even if it gets subdivided, it's probably going to be served by the same sewer line that it's served by. But we can
On
we can do
Washington
what
Street,
ifs.
but-
We can do what ifs a lot. But in this,
Right.
so.
But, yeah, but another what if they only buy the back half and they've got a sewer line that's only halfway across the adjoining piece of property, so, okay.
Okay. Any other comments?
My concern is we're saying that Mr. Allen's property is already served by a sewer line, but that same argument applies to this property as well. It's already served by a sewer line. In essence, correct?
Well, it is on Washington Street with that easement there.
So that same argument applies to
Right.
both properties.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we recommend to the city council that in case number SV 2018-005, that the requested subdivision waiver be granted up to this 188 feet.
I'll second.
Okay. A motion has been made and recommended that the waiver be granted and seconded by Justin up to 180 feet. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
No.
Aye. Okay, I didn't get, can we get a show of hands who said no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That case failed on a vote of 6-4, so. Now, thank you. Now we'll do next, sorry.
Is it? that
Sorry.
motion didn't pass, we want to make a different motion. Does that mean it's denied? Or it just means it wasn't approved?
I mean, unless there's another motion that wants to be made with any kind of variance or any kind of different motion, but
So we're good?
without a motion to
Okay.
grant the variance, it's denied,
Okay.
so.
Okay, our next case is case number SV 2018-006. Applicant Ryan Gailey is requesting a subdivision waiver from section 6.11.A sidewalks to be constructed at 2250 Tarleton, Stephenville, Texas. Jeremy?
Mr. Gailey is requesting a subdivision waiver for the sidewalk that's to be built along the front of that property. According to our subdivision regulations that was passed in January, a 5-foot sidewalk is required along the frontage of the property. Very similar as far as your decisions that need to be made, and the proposed land use, the number of people that'll reside and work on the proposed development, the effective subdivision waiver might have on traffic conditions or public health, safety, and convenience and welfare. So you have the same options as to grant or deny this waiver, and Mr. Gailey can give his case on why he believes that we should have a subdivision waiver for this.
Okay. Pardon me. I'll now open the public hearing. Anybody who would like to speak in favor of this, please come to the podium.
You'll get to hear me talk a lot. All right. What we got on the sidewalk deal, I know I was here whenever Mr. Mayo was here some time back about his property. The sidewalk deal, I understand where you guys can be coming from on it. I want nothing more than Stephenville to look good and be good and service everyone. But the thing of it is that unless the city has a real plan, a 5 or 10 year plan to get sidewalks implemented in certain areas of Stephenville or all of Stephenville, this, making multifamily the developers do this is not, it's not only not going to look good, I just don't think it's going to serve the citizens well. And I don't know of any, I've got several pictures of sidewalks around town now. I've got taken some that are in front of houses that I own. And they're beat up pretty bad. I mean, they would be dangerous to walk on if you're not paying attention. Wouldn't let my kids walk on with that hole in their hand for sure. And so the city's done nothing to fix these sidewalks. This property in particular, again, you've got big lots. Directly to the east of that, it's the rear of their buildings. They're never going to put sidewalks back there. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And then directly to the west of it is a trailer house that has a front entrance driveway. My sidewalk is going to tie into their driveway. I don't get that. I don't understand why I would have to do it. It's not going to serve my tenants any. I wrote a letter. I put it out there. You guys may have it. I said that I would, if you guys would split that sidewalk with me, we'll pave that thing all the way to Harbin Street, wherever we can. And then that way it would service all of my tenants there, all the way to campus. A nice 5-foot sidewalk they can walk on and ride their bikes on, that kind of thing. But other than that, just having a sidewalk in front of my property, across the street, directly across the street, you can see from the map there, they back out into the street. They've got a front entrance, their entrance is the driveway, and there's, I'd say about 10 parking spaces there that back out, which, doing any type of building anymore, you can't do that, but back out onto the street. But anyway, I mean, that's the way that is now. So anyway, if you guys are interested, I took some pictures of my property first, and then I've got them labeled here as to where they are. I've got elementary schools around there where our kids go to school, and some of these sidewalks, they're beat up pretty bad, if they're even existent at all. So you guys take a look at it, Justin.
Thank you.
Commissioners, are there any questions of Mr. Gailey about the sidewalk issue?
you say that you'd be willing to go half to carry it all the way to Harbin? Is that a viable option, Jeremy?
It is. I mean, it's something that we would, I could take to council and see if they would consider that. We are looking at a sidewalk program that is a matching sidewalk program with developers or with residents. So that's still a budget item, and we'll see if that makes it. You know, we have a lot of other needs in the city as well, but that could be a developer agreement that we can work out with Mr. Gailey as we get, you know, depending on how this works out and as we get into the developing process. So that is an option as well.
Maybe it ought to be tabled until you guys get your heads together.
That's certainly an option. Are there any other questions?
Is a 5-foot sidewalk a handicapped ordinance thing?
Yes.
So that people can walk past and stuff.
It has to be
You
ADA
can
compliant.
land a small plane 5-foot sidewalk.
If you're in a wheelchair or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. That's ADA compliant.
Yeah, that's ADA compliant.
Attorney full employment act.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Gailey concerning the sidewalk? Thank you, sir.
I would like to say, one,
Hang on.
If we table this, what would that do to your project?
that's what I was about to say.
All right.
Well, I planned on, of course, you know how planning is. I plan on starting this project in mid-August. But the engineering and things like that has been a little slow. Part of it's been me with my other projects and things like that. And so I just haven't had the time to move this one forward. But I still am thinking probably, you know, September, mid-September, based on that timeline of starting that project. So, yeah, you know, it doesn't come down to, you know, I got to put the sidewalks in, so, I mean, I can put them on my plans. You know, I can get my plans approved. And then, you know, I'm not going to put sidewalks in till the end. They get beat up. So I plan on finishing this project probably the following July, next July, August. So, you know, at that point, probably at the end is when I would put the
So
sidewalks in.
really, if it was tabled and this decision was, because we're looking at next July.
Other than permitting, you know, I mean, if you, granted it, council did it, I wouldn't put them on my plans, but, you know, of course, I put them on my plans, then I'm obligated to put it in, so, you know, so it's just, you know, it would be, one of those things, I don't think that would, if granted the waiver at that point, then say it was in 3 months or 4 months, then
Yeah, it would be fine.
it would be fine at that point, so I guess, yeah, I guess not. So.
What would you have there otherwise? Parking with like a 4-foot, grass area? Or what would be fronting the road right there anyways?
Well, I would have a curb, and then behind it, the sidewalk. I mean, I've got
If you
a
didn't have a
20,
sidewalk.
I've got a 25-foot setback. I think that only have, well, all 4 buildings that set like that are right at 25 feet off the street. So, so it's just driveway and parking lot.
Driveway and
Yeah,
parking.
yeah. So there's not anything, you know, the sidewalk, like I said, I've got a horseshoe, so I've got, there's 2 25-foot driveways that would divide those sidewalks.
All right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Gailey? Thank you, sir. I'll now ask if there's anybody who wishes to speak in opposition for this subdivision waiver. Since we don't, I will recommend again, or not recommend, I will reference the letter that we did receive, and it's in your packet. It's from Brad Allen. With regards to the sidewalk, the request to vary from a newly passed sidewalk ordinance should also be denied. The road right-of-way in this section of Tarleton Street is narrow. It is a high-traffic area used by many Tarleton students. The sidewalk will create a much-needed safe walking area for the students being housed in this area. As more land is developed in the area, it will more than likely be for student housing, making a sidewalk even more important in the future. So, and with that, I will close the public hearing, and I will open it up to comments among the commissioners. Commissioners, what do you think? What are your opinions?
I agree, man, there's no good sidewalks anywhere in town, so
We need 'em.
if you don't have one, you know, but, some of the other places, like, it's gonna terminate into someone's driveway or into the side of a driveway, or, you know, there's no plans to put a sidewalk all the way down, so I don't know. You
But
gotta
that's
start
not an
somewhere.
argument for not doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a new ordinance, we're gonna run into this all over town.
Yeah,
You
you gotta
can't use
start
that as an
somewhere.
argument for not doing it, and the same with these bad shaped sidewalks we have all over town. I mean, yeah, they're bad, let's fix them, but let's not make that an argument for not putting in one saying that, well, the city won't look after them 20 years from now. We need these, that's a high traffic area, there's a lot of students. People are gonna be walking through there, going up to Big Lots, going to the restaurants there in that shopping center. It seems perfectly reasonable to me, logical and preferable that they have
I
something to
walk-
walk on.
I did have a chance this weekend to look at this property, and I measured it from the middle of the lot to the tennis courts. It's exactly 1/2 mile to the Tarleton tennis courts. So I can conceivably see people actually walking and/or riding bicycles either on the sidewalks to go to Tarleton. To me, I think that street is busy. I've been on it, especially when school is in session. It is very busy, and it very well could be, as Lisa said, a safety issue. So,
Well, then it would seem like you say, hey, you know, if you're gonna give us a sidewalk all the way to Harbin, then we should grant you a waiver for sewage. You know what I mean?
Two separate issues.
yeah, that's, no,
It
we're
don't
not,
work like that.
we're not going there.
Whoa.
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it if I were you.
If you put that sidewalk in, Mr. Gailey, will it actually terminate where the pavement of the Big Lots parking lot starts?
It goes into the rear entrance of the Big Lots parking lot.
So it's gonna be concrete to concrete, you're not gonna have a 2-foot wide space of grass there or something where it doesn't continue?
Yes, good point. I don't think so. I don't know where my property line ends right there. I don't know, of course, if that matters with the beach, if I've got a time.
Well, if it tied into the parking lot, I mean, if the pavement of the parking lot comes right to the property line, then you've got a continuous surface. If you don't have a continuous surface, then it's like a blown bridge in the middle of a highway.
Like if they stop short on their property line, and they're gonna be grass in between it.
Yeah, I mean,
Big lots.
I don't know where the property line's staked out or not, but he's only gonna be required to pull the sidewalk to his edge of his property line. He's not gonna be required to do anything more or less. I mean, if there is a sidewalk or, you know, a structure that he can tie into that's right at the property line, then yes, he would tie into it. But if there's nothing there, then he wouldn't be required to do anything more than
I
that.
understand he wouldn't be required to do any more, but in terms of a safety issue, in terms of a city liability issue, if you will, wouldn't it be needed to continue on to pavement? If, like I say, if there's a 2-foot stretch, for instance, let's say that pavement in the parking lot ends 2 feet from their property line. Now you've got a 2-foot piece of grass that in a rainstorm is gonna get muddy, and
But it's kind of immaterial. I mean, are we gonna strike the whole sidewalk because of that?
no,
Yeah.
no,
I mean,
not at all.
I mean, the
I'm just-
city should
I'm just
step
saying
in.
it's
The
gonna
city should
obligate the
step in.
city
Yeah.
to, or to obligate the neighboring owner of the land to somehow continue this sidewalk, otherwise you have a serious safety issue.
If we have a safety issue, we'll make contact with the adjacent property owner, see if we can't work out a deal. I mean, we're not
Okay.
gonna allow a major safety issue. We'll try to prevent that from happening.
That's my concern, so, okay.
I think we have a couple of issues here. tonight to figure out. Number one, decide we do have a sidewalk ordinance, and it is required per the subdivision.
And it's a new ordinance.
And it is a relatively new ordinance. I think, Jeremy, you said the last time we dealt with this, the sidewalk ordinance was put in 2012? Is that right?
No, this ordinance came in January.
January, okay, I'm sorry,
January
thinking of
1st
something else,
this year.
yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we have the fact that it is an ordinance, but I'm also hearing the fact that, we may wanna table this and discuss it in the future. Is that right?
Well, how reasonable is it that we could do this split deal to Harbin? I mean, that would be awesome, having a sidewalk. How realistic is that, Jeremy? Is that?
Anything's possible with money. I mean, when we
And
get
it's
to,
up to city council.
well, when we
They
get to
make that-
budgets, I mean, we have a lot of tough decisions to make throughout the city. And is this one that we do? And I don't know the answer to it. I mean, that'll just have, it's gonna come through discussion. And, there's tough decisions to be made. If it benefits a large neighborhood, maybe that's a stronger conversation than just, a 50-50 match with Mr. Gailey. But if we're talking about 50-50 all the way to Harbin, maybe it's a stronger point that council will consider. But like I said, they have a lot of tough decisions to make budget-wise that, I can't speak for them.
Financially, though, I don't know that works for you.
What is a 5-foot concrete sidewalk? Is
I
it
don't see how that works for you if
a
you're splitting
foot
that
per
cost.
foot?
The price of that, because of the ADA regulations that have to do it in sidewalks, as you know, like a patio or slab, they're, at 3 foot or 5 foot, I mean, you've gotta be pretty level, it's gotta be pretty even, you've got forms on both sides, that kind of thing, so the price on that, what I've got is just over $11,000 is what it's gonna cost me.
To do 300 and how much?
370 feet frontage, but I've got it dead in, I've got 2 driveways, at 25-foot driveways, but the sidewalks, aside from that, is $11,000, so.
I think it's worth exploring
Okay.
to get the two together to see if we can't, run that sidewalk all the way down. If it's not doable, come back, we'll look at it again.
30 foot, $30 a foot.
Your sidewalk is gonna be the last thing you put in anyhow, right?
Excuse me?
Your sidewalk is gonna be the last thing you put in?
Yes, well,
Okay.
Well, I think we've got a window of time here.
How far is it to Harbin? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know.
It's 3/10 of a mile. From the middle of your property to Harbin, 3/10. So,
That's that times 30.
would you like to take action,
$47,000 if
Mr.
you were to do
Petronas?
figures. I would trade in pipe for that. $18,000 in pipe for 50,000 feet of sidewalk.
We're talking about two different
That's-
cases again.
Two different issues,
I'm just
Kerry.
saying, I would make that trade.
All right, let's stick to the sidewalks if we can, so,
Mark?
yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we table case number SV 2018-006 so that the city and Mr. Gailey can get together and maybe come up with some kind of a plan with regard to the sidewalks.
Second.
Motion has been made to table case number SV 2018-006 until the city and Mr. Gailey can come to a reasonable conclusion, and it was been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. And this case is now tabled for further discussion. So. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gailey.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Our next case is case number ZA 2018-002, to consider a recommendation to the City Council to amend the zoning ordinance by adding citizen collection station as a conditional use, special use permit in the permitted uses within the industrial district.
If you're familiar with our zoning ordinance, each zoning district has a permitted use, which is a right to use, without any conditions, other than what's in the zoning ordinance. Conditional permits or conditional use permits or special use permits, there can be conditions, applied to those prior to granting those. In this particular case, in the zoning ordinance, there's a certain number of items that are conditional uses that would come have to get approval from P and Z and council. So what we're doing here is recommending a conditional use, so it wouldn't be a right by use. It would have to, each one of these things each one of these items that come before you that are applied for will have to come and get a conditional use. So in this particular item, we're talking about a citizen collection station. It would be considered a conditional use. I have listed what I feel would be the conditional uses that should be applied before approval. And of course, even when they meet those four, or they're gonna bring that to you, and you'd still be able to have a conditional, approve that conditional use and put what restrictions you feel on it based on the particular site. So I put in there, they must meet the approved TCEQ requirements for a citizen collection station. TCEQs does have standard guidelines, or I should say standard, I probably should say strict guidelines for those citizen collection stations. I've read through them. You know, there's quite a bit. They must display the TCEQ permit on site. That way we know that they're current at all times. They must primarily collect solid waste generated from non-incorporated resident living. You know, we have a contract with Waste Connections. We have checked with them to see if a citizen collection station would be in violation of our contract that we have with them. They said it would not, as long as it's it's marketed primarily toward non-incorporated resident living. And then, you know, I would also add that a particular site that does gets approved for this, that they have to maintain code compliance. If they're not able to maintain these four things, or whatever conditions that you put on them, then their conditional permit can be revoked. And I think I put those guidelines on there for the definition, and then what also would terminate that conditional use permit if they don't live up to that. So this particular case is to grant a conditional or add a conditional use to the zoning ordinance that would allow for this type of use.
Okay. Okay, I'll open up the public hearing and ask if there's anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of amending the zoning ordinance. Please come to the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name is Alan Nix, 113 Ben Hogan, Stephenville, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the commission. I want to commend Jeremy on this, because when he and I first started talking about this as a possible use for the property at Nix Manufacturing, he said the same thing that I feared. There was no such thing listed anywhere in our zoning ordinances to allow. And he did a significant amount of research and then came back with something that I feel like is practical and enforceable. It gives me or anyone in the industrial zoning area the opportunity to do this. It's my opinion that by being governed and regulated by the TCEQ, that takes the burden off the staff, that takes the burden away from them. Basically, it puts it on the property owner to deal with the state through the TCEQ and to have that clearance and permit from them and the ability to operate this. I'll go into more detail later. If y'all approve this, then the next thing you're going to hear is a request for me to apply for one of these. But I want to speak in favor of this, because that is a prerequisite to us being able to operate one of these in the city of Stephenville. I'm not an expert on it. I have read the regulations as Jeremy has, and there are things that we must do to comply, and we will do that, and we will be licensed and inspected by the TCEQ. And I think those are important qualifications and important and significant to me, because the TCEQ is very diligent in maintaining their oversight of landfills and collection stations and things like that.
Mr. Nix, can you describe for me what this collection site would look like?
Basically, a citizen collection station is, as Jeremy designated it, designed to accept household garbage from citizens not living in the city.
Containers, or?
There will be on the premises roll-off container, at least one, with a compactor. The citizens will bring the garbage to the facility there will be a charge for them to leave the garbage there. We'll put it into the container. It'll be compacted. When the container is full, it's my understanding I will attempt to deal with Waste Management. It's Waste Connections now, isn't it? For the disposal of that, and they will be responsible for hauling and disposal in a sanitary landfill. Our particular facility is fenced on all four sides. We have gates to control access. We have a fence around the backside to prevent anyone from coming in. My intention is to use the space between the buildings to protect it from wind and to give it a sight buffer. The only way you'll be able to see what we're doing on the lot is if you're coming either into it or driving down Paddock Street, because it's going to be shielded from the other three sides, basically, by the buildings.
If I may, and I did this last time to HS Development too, we'll get out of the specific case for Mr. Nix and just talk about if we're going to approve the conditional use as a use in our zoning, and then we'll get into Mr. Nix's application for the conditional use. Don't want to cloud it, don't want to have to repeat anything.
Exactly.
And I did cut off an HS Development last time, so not just Mr. Nix, so I apologize.
I
But
got in the
want-
weeds, I apologize.
I have a question about the TCEQ, what their requirements are. Are there things like how long the trash stays before it's moved on? My concern is smell for the residents who live in the area. You know, how would this will impact the surrounding community? Are those requirements built in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It will be an enclosed container, number one. Number two, TCEQ requires that it be emptied at least once a week.
Okay.
So nothing should stay on premises more than 1 week, and that is part of their requirements, and part of the inspection process is to assure that.
And it's fully enclosed?
Yes, ma'am. Well, there will be an opening to put the garbage in, and then the compactor will compress it, and the roll-off will be contained because of the compression.
Everything I've seen has always been, bottles, aluminum, and this is all gonna be one?
It's just my intention is only one.
Okay.
I mean, we're getting in the weeds again.
Oh, yeah, I didn't want to.
All right. Okay. Are there any other questions concerning the amending the zoning ordinance for Mr. Nix? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I'll now ask if there's anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this zoning ordinance. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I will ask the commissioners, are there any comments concerning the zoning ordinance?
Like I said, my greatest worry is that it would impact the surrounding community. There is some houses, and I just wouldn't want it to smell if I was living there.
Isn't there a wastewater treatment plant,
It's further down the street.
down the street, but right there, you hardly
Right.
ever see 'em. I don't know.
But there is a city water well within about 75 feet of this property.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept amending the zoning ordinance or denying.
I move that we accept case number ZA 2018-002.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept case number ZA 2018-002, amending the zoning ordinance by adding a citizen collection station as a conditional use, special use permit within the industrial district. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. And that passes unanimously. Okay, Mr. Nix.
Mark,
Yes.
who seconded that?
I'm sorry, who, it was Carrie Schindler, pardon me. Our next case is case number SUP 2018-001. Applicant Nix Manufacturing LLC is requesting a conditional use, special use permit for a citizen collection station on a portion of 1.18 acre tract located on Lot 1 and 2, Block 12 of the Shepard and Collins Edition, located at 750 Paddock, Stephenville, Texas. Jeremy?
Now that we've added that as a conditional use, staff recommends a conditional use permit for Nix Manufacturing for the Citizen Collection Station in Industrial District. with the following conditions: must meet and be approved by TCEQ requirements for a citizen collection station, must display TCEQ permit, must primarily collect solid waste generated from non-incorporated resident living, and maintain code compliance. I will add that, you know, one of my concerns as I was trying to be, look at this very objectively was, you know, the trash concern and what it would look like. I think if you look at the site, if you switch to the, go one more, let's see what, you can see that little yellow box is in the middle of that, go back now one. You'll see that right next to, in between the two buildings are where the dumpsters will be located, so they are shielded, you know, from the normal person driving by, shielded from some wind. The property is surrounded by some fencing, so, you know, my thought was, you know, if it did start blowing, you know, where all the trash would go, but it is fenced, so that will help. So some of my concerns from the site specific for this particular thing was the code compliance part of it, and, you know, the trash. We've kind of discussed this. The current zoning is for lot 1 and 2, block 12 of Chapard and Collins is located at 750, is zoned industrial. The comprehensive plan, future land use calls for it to be multifamily. We'll note the committee assembled to update the future land is currently recommended this property to stay industrial. The building use regulations in industrial is intended to serve as a location for general industrial activities. The water property is served by a 6-inch city water main, and it's also served by a 6-inch sanitary sewer main. The property is fronted paddock, which is served by the city. That was another concern that I brought, that I was working through was, you know, is there gonna be a lot of truck traffic? You know, when I think of trash, I think of big, you know, trash trucks. That's not gonna be the case. You know, any additional trash trucks or large industrial trucks there won't be additional traffic. It's gonna be mostly residential or cars that are gonna be dropping off the trash. As you can see from the zoning, if you can go back to the zoning, Karen, please. There is some single family to the north, but it is mostly surrounded by industrial. The multifamily lot, I think there's a house, a single family home that's there. So that's the surrounding zoning for that property. So your staff does recommend the conditional use permit with those stipulations. You can grant the conditional use permit subject to the conditions staff recommends, or you can take those recommendations and make modifications, or you can deny the application on the grounds that the use, even with the conditions and in light of criteria set forth, will be incompatible with uses of adjacent properties. And I can entertain any questions, but Mr. Nix, as you guys know, is here, and he can be very detailed with that, so.
All right. Pardon me. Okay, I'll open the public hearing, and if there's anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this, please come to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We are applying for this, and Jeremy and I have spent a significant amount of time looking at the lot and looking at the layout of the buildings. And Karen, would you back up one, please? One more. All right, there you go. If you look at the north side of our property, that's Shirley Street, and then Paddock is on the east side. We have 3 buildings basically in a row there. The largest open area is between a brick masonry building and then a galvanized metal building. It's my intention to install the receptacles on the north side of that galvanized building to eliminate as much wind and the potential for any odors or any debris or anything else. Again, will come in and out off of Paddock Street. Paddock Street is the designated truck route to and from our property from the Lingleville Road. It does go through a residential area, but it is the city's designated route for us to get trucks in. We have trucks in nearly every day. There are other trucks that come and go up and down that, coming to Love Oil, and then there's a milk truck that stays parked down on the railroad right away about half the time, and he comes and goes through there. So I don't think there's going to be a significant amount of heavy vehicular traffic in that area. The majority of the people that come to us are gonna be in they're gonna be in passenger type vehicles or pickups and that sort of thing. The only significant difference might be in the hauling, but there are already semis that come and go up and down that street anyway, so I don't think that's gonna change that very much. It's our intention to try to open at least 5 days a week to service the people who come to the city. In my opinion, being in the center of the county gives us the best opportunity for people who live outside the city and come to the city anyway to work or to shop or for whatever reason, a place to legally and ethically dispose of the garbage from their house. There is a burn ban in the county half the time, it seems. They're not supposed to burn it. They're not supposed to bury it on their property. Some are underserved, is that a fair way to say it, by rural collection agencies. It's my intention to accept household garbage initially. If there is a demand for bulky items such as couches, chairs, mattresses, things like that, we'll put a second roll-off out there to accept those items. They won't be compacted, but there'll be another roll-off available if the demand is there. This is new for me. I'm not sure what the demand is gonna be, but we're gonna try to see if household garbage is an acceptable method of disposal for them. I've spoken to the county judge. I have heard indirectly from 2 of the commissioners who think this would be a good idea for the county because they deal with illegal dumping routinely in the county, and this should help alleviate some of that. And I'm not foolish enough to think it's going to eliminate all of it, but I think it will help alleviate some of it. And because of that, I think it will serve the citizens of the county well. And we all pay county taxes, whether we live in the city or outside the city. And because of that, I think it'll help all of us, and indirectly because it'll help some of the county tax dollars that go out to help clean up some of these things. I'm not sure what other information you may want. If you have other questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Nix? And this is where we can get into the weeds.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I have a question. Quite often I go over to Waste Management to take my cardboard and newspapers over here. Is it Waste
Connections.
Waste Connections. And they have big, long containers, and I'm able to slide it open and throw my cardboard and newspapers in there. Is that the same kind of collection box, so to speak, that you're looking at, or?
And I'm not sure what they will provide. It will be something with a compactor on one end
it's
of
got a
it.
compactor, okay.
Now, if we accept bulky items, we'll probably have to have an open top that we can put heavier items into. But my initial intention is to have an enclosed container with a compactor on it, and that way you can accept more bags and compress them, and then when it gets full, we'll contract with them to dispose of it.
And will you have somebody there operating that compactor? I mean, it won't be like if I live in the county, I can't just drive up and put it in there and push the button myself.
It will be a manned facility.
Okay.
There may be a way to automate it and be safe, but at this point in time, it will be a manned facility. And I think TCEQ requires that unless they come up with another set of guidelines.
Okay.
It'll be a cash toll booth.
Beg your pardon?
It'll be a cash toll booth.
Correct.
And will it be, the fees that you're gonna charge, are you gonna charge a per access fee, or will there be like, in some of the other research that I've done, they have a year fee. So you pay X amount, $30 to $50 a year to be able to access the compactor. Or will you do it on a yearly basis or on a as-needed basis? Or have you even thought that far?
Depending on the clientele, my initial intention is to do it on a per piece basis.
Okay.
And if we have a significant amount of the people who use us frequently and, make a monthly charge or an annual charge or something like that, and that may provide them an alternative to some of the rural collection that they're dealing with, and give them an opportunity to do something with it besides that, or in addition to that. I know sometimes, and we are fortunate in the city because we get picked up twice a week, but if we didn't get picked up twice a week, there'd be a lot of times that those containers are not large enough. And this would be something they could do with the overflow in that case.
Okay. How often do they pick up in the county? Are you aware?
Some are once a week, some are once every other week.
Okay.
You have a contract.
And you have a contract with them and establish that, and I'm guessing that the fee is determined by how often they pick up.
That is correct.
And you have to get it out to the road, in the container or in something that they can pick up. And sometimes that's a significant distance from your house out to, the public right-of-way that they are gonna pick up on.
Are you planning on doing anything in conjunction with with shipping it via rail?
No, sir, I don't think so.
There's a massive landfill out in Sierra Blanca, west of Van Horn, and you can access it directly from our railroad here in town.
Okay. Well, and of course, the property across the street from us does not belong to us, and it has a rail siding that goes. Right.
But when I went and looked at the property, I thought that at first was what you had in mind, but
No, sir.
I'm disabused of that notion.
Well, that may be something that Waste wants to do. I don't think my volume would justify that, but Waste might do that at some point in the future. The only contact I've had from any of my neighbors, Mr. Woolley owns a piece of property directly across the street from us along that railroad right-of-way frontage.
That little triangular shaped piece?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then he owns that little triangular shaped piece, and then he owns the piece of property that is adjacent to that north of it. He owns both of those. And he asked me what we were doing.
He's the county commissioner,
No,
or the former county commissioner?
no, this is Wayne Woolley.
Oh, Wayne, okay.
Mhm. But he asked me what my intention was, and I explained it to him, and he said he had no problem with it. He said he was gonna send a letter. Did he send you correspondence, Shira?
We didn't get anything.
Okay.
This picture shows that piece of property occupied, but going by the other day, I found it.
There was a
completely
construction,
vacant.
there was a construction site there, then he had it leased to the construction company that was
Nice.
working on Tarleton. And they have since vacated that, and the chain link fence that was on it has been removed also.
Mark,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, Wayne Woolley sent an email regarding our approval.
I didn't, did you guys get?
No.
I didn't get it.
You can read it.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I was gonna add that.
To whom it may concern, I approve the use/request for a citizen collection center within 200 foot from the properties at 713 and 715 Paddock, Stephenville, Texas. Call or email if you have any questions. Regards, Wayne Woolley.
Okay.
Were the houses, or the people to the north, were they notified of this as well? And
Everybody within 200 feet of the property is
And
notified.
we've heard nothing from any?
Just that one.
Okay. And if there were complaints down the road, what is, let's say that somehow it did cause a problem, what are our options at that point? If it was a big, once we've granted this,
At that point, it would become a code compliance issue, I believe, and I think the code compliance people would come and ask me to correct whatever that issue was. Now, odors are subjective,
Smells.
yeah, that's hard to.
but
hard to
if
define,
there
yeah.
is visible trash or other things, then it becomes a code compliance issue. And that, the city would be involved then. If there were other things involved, it might be TCEQ, but if it was that, and the neighbors were having trouble with things blowing into their yard or whatever, that would be code compliance, and we would need to address that.
And that's why I put the code compliance in there, because of issues, nuisance, whatever that may be, we can address it with the code compliance. And if he doesn't meet those requirements that we're asking from code compliance, we have the ability to revoke that permit. The other option, and we haven't done this with any other that I know of, is you could put a time frame to renew this conditional use permit. That's an option. You know, I'm not recommending that here, but I want to give you guys every option that you have.
Are there any other citizen collection stations anywhere in the city?
No.
No, not
There,
at all.
there's not any more in the county that I'm aware of.
No. There is a new one in Granbury.
In Granbury, there is.
That's-
Within the
that's
city.
It's within the city.
Mhm.
There's several
Every day.
cities. I did some research this weekend and looked at them, and most all of the ones are pretty much what you're talking about right here. So, one question I had, this is strictly limited to county residents, right?
Ye-
Not citizen, not Stephenville residents.
I,
You must live outside the city limits, right?
I don't think I can legally screen them and ask for an ID to see where they live. However, if you live in the city, you're already paying for collection service.
Right.
And unless you have bulky items or something like that, that would be the only opportunity that we might serve someone in the city, unless, as we were talking about, someone just had an overflow that they needed to dispose of quickly.
Okay.
My intention is primarily outside the city. I don't think I can legally discriminate against someone just because they live inside the city if they comply with the rules and regulations and requirements of our facility.
If you're charging a fee, I would imagine you take all comers,
Yes, sir.
but,
There is a lengthy list of prohibited items. And that is TCEQ requirements, and I will follow those to the best of my ability.
That
you
would,
won't be getting anybody driving out here from Benbrook just to bring their trash.
Not likely.
some of those would be like tires or chemicals.
Tires, chemicals, paints, solvents, pesticides, herbicides, you know, the list is long as both of my arms.
Okay.
Of the things that because these things don't go into public landfills. And what I put in this container will go to a public landfill. So I'm required to monitor that waste stream that comes in, just as anybody at any landfill does.
What if we have a situation like we had this year with the storm, and we've got a lot of limbs and brush and trash like that? Will you accept that as well?
I'm not gonna be set up initially to handle the debris like that.
Okay.
I don't wanna compete with the city's landfill.
Sure.
And I don't wanna compete with the haulers that haul to the city's landfill or other landfills. And I don't want construction and demolition
Okay.
debris. I don't want those things that our landfill accepts. I think that they have an adequate opportunity to use that landfill, and I don't want to compete with them, and I'm not intentionally going to allow contractors and people like that to use the facility because it's designed for individuals.
Okay.
Your toll taker is also gonna be an inspector?
Whoever is collecting is going to have to monitor the waste stream, yes, sir, that is correct. And you will have to be licensed by the TCEQ to do that.
Okay. Are there any other questions of Mr. Nix? Thank you, sir.
Okay, I have filed a conflict of interest statement with Shira because I sit on the board that appoints this commission. And unless there are further questions, I'm going to excuse myself and let y'all have your discussion and your vote in my absence. If you choose to ask me another question and call me back, I'm going to wait in the lobby and let y'all go discuss and take your vote, whatever your pleasure is. And if you have other questions, please send someone out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nix. I'll now ask if there's anybody who wishes to speak in opposition of this conditional use special permit. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll turn it over to the commissioners for any comments or questions that you might have.
I find it hard to believe that there's all those houses right next to it and no one came to say, hey, you're putting in a landfill right next to my house.
Yeah.
Well, not a landfill,
But,
there's a lot of truck traffic around that.
Yeah.
Bills,
Yeah.
they're probably used to it.
Well,
I don't,
I'm not worried about the truck traffic, it's the smell.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
smell.
a possibility.
You get household garbage, and it does not go away.
and then that's a good point, and that,
And then
that's when they would turn it over. That would be a code violation, so.
That would be the key, is that I'd have to know that TCEQ is on top of something like that. I just can't, 104 degrees, your household garbage sitting there for a week.
it's been
That's
sitting
what
outside
worries me.
in your
Yeah.
burn barrel for a week, and then you decide, "Oh, I'm just gonna take a day, so it could be sitting there for 30 days, you know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
30-day-old trash bag.
I'm guessing probably just, it's gonna be a very, hopefully tightly sealed. In order to, in order to have a compactor on there, it's gonna have to have a really tight seal, so I'm not really sure if the odor is gonna be that big of an issue.
It will. It will.
You said that there's a place in Granbury that's
Yes,
doing
yes, there
this,
is.
and I wonder for how long, and if there's
It's-
any complaints, or,
I don't know of any complaints, but I think they've been open for about a year now, and so,
I mean, I guess I'd be inclined to let this have a go with some sort of, I just would want to hear from citizens if they have complaints.
Do you
I
know-
want some,
Did he say he was getting all the equipment from Waste Connections?
yeah.
Is it like an upfront cost fee that, I mean, it doesn't matter, but.
I think he's still gonna look into it, but that's gonna be I think that's a requirement that he's gonna have to use Waste Connections, cause there are,
But are they providing all the equipment?
I don't know if he's gonna have to, I'm sure he's gonna have to pay some kind of cost. At some point, he'll have to pay for that.
Well, he's gonna have to lease the compactor.
Yeah.
Their containers are interchangeable. When you see them on the back, you see the same containers at the back of supermarkets where they dump stuff, and they are compactors
mhm,
on the rear of supermarkets,
mhm.
so.
Jeremy, does TCEQ specifically deal with smell? Is there anything in their regulations that talk about that?
I don't remember seeing that.
Would they,
You got a hand up, but
I can answer that
Yes,
question
sir.
for you. So TCEQ, in this instance, it would all be a citizen complaint. So an odor nuisance, a nuisance odor is, someone has to call TCEQ and say, it stinks here, and then, and then.
And then it would be addressed?
All hell breaks loose, but.
Sure.
Okay.
But it is,
It
citizen
would be
complaint.
dealt with.
Yes.
and Mr. McClinton, do they inspect the facility on a yearly basis, or,
I can answer.
please?
I work with TCQ at a Caparel. We
Mhm.
had air permit for coatings, and they came every 2 years, I believe. And
Every
then,
2
they use GPS and site deals that tell distances from our property. And it was pretty strict. If he's applying to their, or complying with their rules, I think they'd be pretty strict. And I was thinking if there was a smell problem, he could increase the pickups maybe
More than
twice a
once,
week instead of
yeah.
once a week.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good
I
idea.
mean, I'm with you, it is, garbage is garbage, so it's probably, there's gonna be some
I
of it.
think I'll buy some stock in Febreze.
Well, then we could have a motion, not that it could be in right in the middle of town. Yeah. Yeah, for him to be able to apply for it.
Are there any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to either grant a conditional use permit or to deny a conditional use permit for case number SUP 2018-001.
I move that we approve as presented, case number SUP 2018-001.
I'll second it.
Can I make a motion as well?
We have a motion on the floor,
Okay.
so
yeah, he can make a motion to amend the motion.
you can make it, yes.
Yeah, I make a motion that we amend the motion
Okay,
to issue this, to make this for a 2-year period of time, by which it requires a renewal.
To-
The last one?
No, you can, each conditional use that comes before you, you can put additional conditions on it as part of a condition. So in this particular, you can do a time frame if you choose, and that's what I believe he's asking for, is every 2 years, he would have to come back and ask for conditional use from P and Z and council.
okay. Is that what your motion is?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
that,
Just the first 2 years or every 2 years?
Well, he'd have to come
The-
back in front of us in 2 years.
See how it's
Yeah.
going?
Right.
That's why I was asking what the investment is on his part, cause,
Right.
He will most likely lease all of the equipment.
yeah, so that's.
So now we're gonna vote on the a motion to amend
He
first.
needs a second. Did he get a
That's
second?
right. No, there is no second. For lack of a second, that motion dies. So, the motion has been made by Justin and seconded by Mr. Muncy to grant a conditional use permit. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? And that passes. So, if you, thank you very much. All right.
Code compliance, we have to,
Well, let's
see what happens.
if that'll be sufficient to deal with the situation, that's fine.
Next, our next items tonight are next items tonight, we're going to vote on amending the City of Stephenville zoning ordinances. And what we're going to do is we're going to combine combine the 7 ordinances so that we're not taking each one individually. So at this time, I'm going to open a public hearing for cases ZA 2018-003 through cases ZA 2018-009, which are items F through L on your agenda. Cases ZA 2018-003 through ZA 2018-007 amend the zoning ordinance to allow restaurant with alcoholic beverage service as a permitted use in neighborhood business, retail and commercial, central business, industrial, and downtown district. Case number ZA 2018-08 repeals the restaurant with alcoholic beverage service as a conditional use, and case ZA 2018-009 repeals section 6.5 restaurant with alcoholic beverage service in the zoning ordinance. At this time, I'll open the public hearing again and ask if there's anybody who wishes to speak in opposition of this.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr.
Alan Nix,
Mr. Nix.
113 Ben Hogan, Stephenville. I urge y'all to be cautious. This is one area that the city still maintains some control, and in my opinion, this is a zoning issue. Zoning is extremely subjective. The state has encroached on the city's authority in many, many areas, and this is one of those areas where they have tried, through their regulations and requirements, to encroach on the city's authority to regulate where and how we do business and what kind of business we do. It's my opinion that we, as a city, have the right to govern where and how alcoholic beverages are served. And we've done that through zoning, and I think appropriately so. And we have several zoning classifications that allow us to do that and consider that on a case-by-case basis, rather than just allowing it to go wherever the alcohol beverage control people say it should go. They still have to comply with their regulations, but I think this gives the city the opportunity to regulate who we want to be as a city and what we want to include in our city and what kind of businesses and where those businesses are located. I know that this is sometimes a very unpopular subject and it's very controversial. It's really not a matter of whether you're pro or con alcoholic beverages. Do you believe that the city should be able to control its own destiny and control some of the uses for substances like alcohol in your city or not? And if you do, you need to maintain the ordinances as they are. If you want to relinquish that, then we can abolish them and let the state dictate this along with a number of other things to us that they already dictate. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And for whatever that's worth, y'all have a tremendous amount of authority and you have a tremendous burden to try to oversee what happens in the city. And this is one of those instances where I hate to see the city not be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nix. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this? So, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and I will turn this over to the commissioners. Commissioners, are there any comments or questions?
Do we have have any liability if we have ordinances in conflict with state regulations or state law?
Yes,
Yes.
while we've done it for many years, there's only been one case that I've learned that we've denied a particular case. We had good reason, but you know, in any case where we treat a restaurant and a restaurant with alcohol differently, we are liable and, you know, potentially can be sued for denying one of those cases. And so if you look at what I
So
presented,
in other words, you're saying if the state law says a restaurant can have an alcoholic beverage service and we deny that service, then the applicant could institute court action?
right. So if you look at your packet, the administrative code says that, that a city may not, by regulation, charter, ordinance, by government, may not impose stricter standards on premise, for businesses required to have a license permit under this code. Basically saying we can't, through ordinance, zoning, have stricter regulations for restaurant with alcohol than a regular restaurant. Another word of saying that is the state wants the control of who gets to have alcohol in those rules, not the city. And so that's where this has come from. As we talked about in our workshop, with that, it'll also speed the process up. Since we shouldn't have different regulations, it should make it a lot easier process for them, for a restaurant to come in and get going without having to spend 30 to 45 days to get approval.
Okay.
So basically,
So
go ahead.
if a restaurant wants to have alcoholic beverages, I can think Fiddle Creek for an example, they served alcoholic beverages. I have no idea what the circumstances were of the potential owner of coming in there and not having come in, the people over in Granbury. But if we denied them a license and yet they applied to the state for a license and the state granted them a license, we would have a liability in that case as a city.
I mean, if they were denied a license with us, I mean, we have to sign paperwork. So before it goes to the state, the city has to sign off on paperwork saying that, you know, we allow the location of that
Okay.
through our zoning. So in that particular case where they were denied, I wouldn't sign off on, or the city secretary wouldn't sign off on paperwork that they were allowed to do that. So I don't know that we would ever get to that point,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Basically, what I think you're saying is that by going through this amendment process city-wise, it is aligning with the requirements under the Texas Administrative Code and TABC.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, my inclination is to approve, because it just seems like it makes it fair across the board, rather than us picking and choosing. I mean, I worry that there's that there could be undue favoritism for this restaurant versus that restaurant, or something of that nature. This makes it even across the board.
I just don't want us to get sued.
Yeah, and legally we should do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I happen to agree with Mr. Nixon that we should maintain local control. People down in Austin don't know what Stephenville is or what they do or what we are,
right.
and we do.
Until they challenge, until someone challenges. it.
Until someone challenges it, and then we get into a lawsuit,
But you can fix it then.
and we'll lose. We will lose.
Not necessarily. We wouldn't go on.
Well-
the license.
Okay, true.
We wouldn't go on.
All right, is there any other comments? Okay, at this time, I am going to entertain a motion to recommend to the council to approve or deny cases ZA 2018-003 through ZA 2018-009 to amend the zoning ordinance and allow for restaurant with alcoholic beverage service as a permitted use in neighborhood business, retail, and commercial, central business, industrial, and downtown district, as well as to repeal the restaurant with alcoholic beverage service as a conditional use and repeal section 6.5 restaurant with alcoholic beverage service in the zoning ordinance.
I make a motion to be denied.
Okay. Motion has been made to deny by Mr. Delator. Is there a second? Hearing no second, that motion dies. So,
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
motion has been made and by Lisa Latouche and seconded by Mr. Petronas. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. I'm sorry, which one? You? All right. This passes 9-1, and this will now go to council. Is that right, Jeremy?
That's right.
Okay. That is all the business that we have tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
A motion has been made to adjourn. Is there a second?
A second.
And a second by Ms. Latouche. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?